Welcome to Something More to Podcast, where we move through topics wherever the conversation takes us. I'm your host, Richard Collins.
And I'm Adam Culbertson.
So this week is a really big week for us because as we've probably mentioned here a few times, or if anybody actually follows us on anything social media related, you probably already know, this week is the week that we have started our actual play podcast.
Yes. Episode 1 came out 2 days ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been a lot of fun recording it. I mean, like, in all honesty, I've got a lot of time with doing tabletop RPGs. Like, I've been doing campaigns. For the most part, I've at least had one campaign going for pretty much, oh man, like 16 years now. Like, yeah. I've been playing at least one campaign pretty much the entire time. Sometimes more, and a few small stints of not playing any.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, and out of all of those different campaigns that I've been in, everything I've done with it, this one has probably been the most fun.
It's very flattering to me because, like over the past 10 to 15 years, I don't know the exact year that I started playing or anything like that. I felt like such a noob, even as a player for so long, because I would play and then I'd stop playing because I'd move or something, and then I'd come back into playing, and I was always a player. I felt like I was having to relearn everything again every time, and I felt like such a noob for so long because of that. But I just, over the past, I would say 5 years, it's been in the back of my mind that I really wanted to do my own campaign, that I wanted to pick up a setting. I wanted to do Shadowrun for a while, and I ended up pre-ordering the books at a store, and then that store shut down, and I never got my books, and then I never went and got the books again and everything. But
which is really a shame, because for what it's worth, I was really looking forward to getting into Shadowrun.
Yeah, and that's something else that sucks. Support your local gaming shop, your local comic shop, gaming shop, wherever they allow people to come and play card games or tabletop games. Like, definitely support your local stuff. And
oh yeah, especially with the way that the online market is these days. Like, it is so hard for small local shops like that to get by.
Yeah.
Like, the best thing that you can do is just go, like, spend time there, like, have like a weekly game you play there, maybe, like, spend some money. Like, even if it's not necessarily on products or anything, maybe buy some drinks, some snacks or stuff. Like, that's, and in all honesty, a large part of their business these days, I feel like.
Yeah, is drinks and snacks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's too easy to just buy the products and supplies and everything online, just because, I mean, Amazon, they put fucking crazy ass deals out there.
Oh yeah. And really quick aside, really that extends to almost any kind of small local store.
Yeah.
Because, the internet market is pushing them all out of business. And, some of them have some real, like, things to offer still that are just kind of getting ignored because of convenience.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the bigger ones are still surviving is because they do sell on Amazon or eBay or something.
Right. But back to maybe a happier note on all of this.
Yes, I just felt like I needed to put that out there because,
I mean, and that's fair. It's a good thing to put out there. It's an important thing, and definitely we would like to see, because I mean I've spent so much time in like local gaming stores, and I would really hate to see that kind of thing just disappear entirely. But yeah, so we've actually been recording for a little while now. I guess at this point it would have been like 2+ months that we've been recording.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of fun. Like we can't wait to get more of it out there for everybody. Like I'm really, again, just like with this podcast, I don't even really care if anybody listens to it. Like,
Yeah.
I'll listen to it. It's great.
Oh yeah. I will say that I just so I'm fresh on everything, I do find myself listening to the episodes, just to remember things that I had done or said, or things that y'all said, so I can throw it back at y'all later or something.
And that's kind of like a fringe benefit to all of this too. Because,
Yes, it is.
even as a player, like I can listen back to it and everything and kind of have everything that happened fresh in my mind. Like I don't have to worry about like jotting down dozens and dozens of notes and like trying to flip through them like mid game, trying to figure out, oh, what was this? Who was I talking to? Like, what was that name or this name?
Yeah.
Like I actually have a better grasp of the names in general because I can hear them more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely been a completely different experience than just playing normal and not recording. Like even if we weren't produce or like putting any production value into it and just listening back on the playthrough, it's definitely a different experience. And I totally recommend anybody that's DMing or playing really to share that recording with the rest of the group, so you can. It really helps everybody remember everything.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, even if you have no intentions or plans of publishing it at all, like it's a great idea. I feel like, honestly, everybody should just record it anyway so everybody can listen back.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has a smartphone now. Just make sure it's charged and just set it on the table and record away.
Like that really is a great idea. And I think it really enhances the campaign. And, I think maybe we should back up just a hair, because I know some people that might be listening may not necessarily be familiar with D&D or other tabletop games. So for the uninitiated, we'll say, like in short, and this is always my go-to favorite explanation, really.
Yeah, it's probably. But I know what you're gonna say because it's mine too.
Yeah, but in short, D&D and other tabletop games are basically a form of group storytelling. It's basically you have a DM, like somebody who has kind of crafted or created this world and is kind of guiding the players through it, and is going to be the major bulk of the actual story and what happens. Like they're the final arbiter of how things happen or what does or doesn't happen, basically. And all of the players basically get control of a particular character and everything that character does and who that character is, what they do, what they go towards, their thoughts, feelings, and opinions on everything. And so it can really be a lot of fun because in a way, I mean, it is what's called a role-playing game where you actually play a role, but it's a role of your own design. So it kind of, in a way, is kind of like improv. Like if you look at like improv comedy or things like that, it kind of has that kind of creative exercise where you're coming up with things off the top of your head and like really kind of getting into a character and being able to kind of be somebody that you aren't. Yeah. Like be able to kind of experience like a different personality for a while, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. I mean, that's my favorite thing about it. There are some people, like especially just starting out, you may not be comfortable with playing something that you wouldn't do. I highly recommend playing something that you wouldn't do, just because it's so much fun.
Absolutely.
To get outside of your own shoes and doing something completely like that's not part of your character in real life.
Absolutely.
But there's nothing wrong with playing yourself too. I mean, in a fantasy world, yeah, it's going to force you to make decisions on the fly that you may not do, but you're thinking about it in the way that you normally would.
Right. And I would dare say that, when you first get started, your first few campaigns, things like that, it's pretty normal and practical for you to mostly stay in line with your own thoughts, opinions, and beliefs so that you have an easier time kind of transitioning into it, getting used to the way that things work, getting used to the thought of role playing and the general set of rules. Because especially when you're talking about D&D based, which really covers like D&D and like Pathfinder and really most D20 based systems, as they're called.
Yeah.
Like they all kind of follow a very similar rules pattern. So once you kind of learn the way that that flows, the way that it generally works, it's a lot easier to pick up another system that's built the same way.
Yeah, it is. And Pathfinder, I found Pathfinder a little bit more difficult to play myself. But
Pathfinder is definitely a lot more rules heavy. Like it kind of takes the path that D&D was going down.
yes,
Like in 3.0 and 3.5, and just kind of keeps going in that direction, which is very like rules heavy, very like particular. Like it's the kind of thing that can get really, really, really bogged down in rules, if you care to let it, because there are rules for literally everything.
yeah,
And they're pretty much all separate and different, and you have to look through a dozen source books to find exactly how it would work if, like, you know, the dragon charges you when you're holding up a shield, but you have like a potion of giant strength and you're polymorphed into a centaur at the time, and whether the dragon's going to bounce off of your shield or not.
yeah.
Because that's kind of the way that whole thing is geared towards, is being able to actually get through all the minutia of the rules and figure out how that's actually going to work.
Yeah. Now we don't play in that rule set. We don't play in Pathfinder or second edition Pathfinder, which is out now, I think.
Right, it is.
But we play in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, which the rules are a lot more simplified, which I really like because I like story-driven campaigns and not heavy on constant rule checks and everything like that. And it's also really easy to learn for a new player.
It is.
Or new DM.
I mean, it absolutely is. And I mean, you know, one of our players in Monsters, Microphones and Monsters, which I guess the first time we've really name dropped that here in this episode.
Yeah.
But like one of our players in Microphones and Monsters is actually very new. Like he started playing in a campaign with us like, what, a month, 2 months before we started recording on Microphones and Monsters.
Yeah. Not even, it was like not even a month.
Yeah. And just picked right up on it. Joined us from Microphones and Monsters, and I mean, he's been doing great.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's really taken to it. And, you know, for some people, it'll be faster than others. Like, I would not say that, oh, well, you know, if it just, you don't quite get into it at first, like, I wouldn't let that discourage you.
No. And he is one of the players that he doesn't really want to go outside of his comfort zone as a player and play something that he normally wouldn't play. But I did encourage him to pick something that would normally be outside of his comfort zone and put his character into that situation.
And I think it's worked out great.
Yeah, I do too.
But yeah, so I mean, it's something that can be done by people of any experience level or any skill level. And, you know, as long as you kind of just let yourself have fun with it and don't get too worked up in like the details and like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Like, it works whatever way you want it to. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the ability of your character to do something is pretty much determined by you and the DM.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm a pretty flexible DM when it comes to stuff, especially in this new setting, because it throws in some really different concepts with player races. Like, instead of something having verbal components, it has like a more thought component because a race can't speak.
But yeah, I mean, so it's definitely something I would encourage anybody to do. Like, granted, it can take some time. Like for most people, like what would be a reasonable amount of time would be like meeting weekly or possibly every other week, for maybe about 3 hours at a time.
Yeah. I do find 3 hours to be just a perfect amount of time. Anything beyond that, my voice is killing me. Anything under that, I feel like nothing happens. I mean, stuff does happen within an hour of playing,
Right.
but I just feel like not enough gets covered in less than 3 hours.
and generally it's a pretty low investment to get into. Granted, you can spend a ton of money on it, but that's true of almost anything. But if you don't really want to spend a lot of money on it, you just want to try it out, or try and get into something that's going to be a pretty low cost hobby. I mean, you don't even necessarily have to buy books. Most gaming groups are going to have a few copies of the rule books that you'll need, which for most systems nowadays, you only really need one book.
Yeah.
Like once upon a time, you needed dozens upon dozens of them.
Yeah.
Like I've got dozens and dozens of them sitting at home. But nowadays, you really only need one book, and you don't even really need that book as long as you have access to what's in it.
Yeah.
And you can get that from other people in a gaming group.
Yeah.
And in some cases, like you can actually find a lot of those resources online too.
Yeah, there's a lot of homebrew stuff too, as far as creatures, magic items, all sorts of stuff, and there's also very cheap options for homebrew items as well for creators out there. They put it out on like DM Guild and stuff like that.
Right. And so, yeah, definitely a fun pastime. Definitely recommend it to anybody who might even remotely be interested. Or, you know what? Start listening to some actual play podcasts.
Yes.
I mean, ours preferably. I would like it if you would listen to ours. But, I mean, even if not ours, listen to somebody's. There's tons of them out there.
There's
some that are wildly popular at this point. And just give it a try, give it a listen. Like there's a ton of them that are great out there that give you a really good feel of what it's like to kind of play. And if you enjoy listening, great. If you maybe want to start playing, you can find a group. There are groups that meet online. You don't necessarily even have to find people in person. But if you don't really feel like you want to play, but you enjoy listening, then just listen. That's good too.
Yeah, you don't have to know the rules, especially with an actual play podcast that is very story driven and not so much on constant rolling of dice.
Right. I mean, generally, if it's story driven, you don't have to know any of the rules. Basically, the rules are just there for the players and the DM to negotiate what happens.
Yeah, yeah, and like another thing that I if like say you're wanting to deceive somebody, but I'm like, well, what are you saying to them? I like to ask, well, what are you saying to them?
Oh yeah.
And if it's fucking good and it's convincing, you don't need to do a roll.
Oh yeah, absolutely. and that's one of the beautiful things about it is because and preferably, like I kind of like the way that plays anyway, of being able to really kind of, role play things out rather than having to rely on rolls and skills and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like I personally think that in the scheme of things, and granted, even I, once upon a time when I was first getting started, got really hung up in rules.
Yes.
It doesn't hurt that I was in like a really rules heavy system, but I really find that I prefer systems where you can resolve things through role play at least as easily as you can through rules.
Yeah. And there is a lot of systems out there. There's plenty of different types of settings that are more modern day, that are cyberpunk.
Oh yeah.
All sorts of stuff. So
I mean, for any of you who haven't actually listened to our podcast yet, our Microphones and Monsters, again, ours isn't even a traditional D&D setting where it's just high fantasy.
No,
as it's called. Like ours is actually in a Lovecraftian type setting.
Yeah. It does take place in a 1920s ish kind of technology, but like take like the high fantasy setting and then evolve it over a bunch of years.
Yeah, like maybe give it like, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 years.
Yeah, something like that, to where it's like 1920s technology-wise, but that technology was assisted by magic.
Yeah, so you've got some things that are kind of maybe even beyond that time because it's magic instead of just pure technology.
But it is its own world, so it doesn't have a lot of the things that a typical D&D, high fantasy, medieval kind of setting has, like creatures and monsters and stuff. It does not share a lot of those things.
No, but it does have your kind of idea behind different races.
Yes.
like a fair number of the player races like do exist within the world. Some may be used more than others, and some maybe not at all, at least thus far.
Yeah, so far, yeah. Well, especially at the beginning. But.
Especially at the beginning. But yeah, like, so, you know, especially if you maybe are interested in Lovecraft, or if you like Lovecraft, you know, it's definitely a very interesting kind of idea to look at. Very like cosmic horror, very like, you know, ineffable cosmic energies that kind of influence the universe kind of ideals, like where basically there are just some things about the universe, the elder gods and things like that dictate things just by existing.
Yeah. Like, and not so much like, oh, there's a dragon that lives off in the mountains or something, and it's going to come and we fear that the dragon may come and burn down the city. Well, that doesn't exist in this world because.
No, it'd be more like the city burned down and you're like, what happened?
Yeah. Or like there's just this nagging feeling that there's something off out there. But you never really, it's like if you can go back and like to a time where you were just scared, maybe it's late at night and in your home and you look down in the hallways dark or something like that, and you feel like there's something there.
Oh yeah.
But you turn on the light, nothing's there. But you have that uneasiness that something's there, especially like as a kid.
Or like you keep noticing out of the corner of your eye, like something moving or something like that, and you turn and there's never anything there. But it's like when you stop looking at it again, it just seems like something's moving again.
Yeah. And that's the threat in this world, rather than your typical monsters being everywhere and all kinds of beasts and everything. It's more of an uneasiness that something is there, and in this case there may or may not be. There definitely is sometimes, but not all the time.
Right. But yeah, so I mean, again, I mean, it's been an absolute blast recording, and we hope that people have as much fun listening to it as we have, well, both recording and listening to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So mention listening to other actual plays. I do have some favorites. The first actual play podcast I listened to was The Adventure Zone, which I do recommend that one, or at least the first story that they did called the Balance series. I really enjoyed that. I haven't listened to their new one in Graduation, and I just wasn't getting into Amnesty, but I think it was because of the rule set, the setting. It just wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. Got The Shocking Gasp, Wheeler Woe. Those are the big ones that I really like right now. that I'm listening to. I don't have a lot of time to put into listening to a lot of podcasts, and I only started listening to actual play podcasts last year.
Yeah.
Because I had never listened to them again. I actually kind of learned how to DM from Griffin McElroy on the Adventure Zone. I don't watch or listen to Critical Role because I don't want to mess up my expectations.
Yeah.
Because what they do is amazing. Absolutely amazing. I have seen clips. I have listened to a couple episodes here and there, but they are just absolute professionals at what they do. Like they are top notch.
Well, and I mean, for the most part, they're all like, you know, voice actors in their own right.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, that's kind of already kind of a level of that kind of acting ideal and, you know, the vocal manipulation and everything like that. Whereas, you know, we're just aspiring at best.
Yeah. Yeah. We are not professionals.
No.
We learned how to podcast through this podcast to be able to put out a higher quality actual play podcast. Like that was the whole reason, really.
Right. And I think quality wise and content wise, I think we're doing just fine.
Yeah. And there are things that I don't like about actual plays. I guess the status quo, on a lot of things. And if you have listened to the first episode, and the introduction episode, you know this, you know the length of our episodes and everything like that. I don't have the time to listen to an hour and a half, 2 hour podcast.
Right. And I know some people do, but
some people
a lot
do.
of people don't.
But because of that, like, we wanted to keep it short, sweet, to the point. The way that I DM and the way that we just play in 3 hours, we kind of cover a scene in 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's kind of fallen in a pretty nice place where, I mean, we haven't even been really editing, or I guess you,
Yeah.
I mean, as our primary, like, actual producer, really.
Yeah.
Like, you haven't really been having to edit things for time so much as you've just been editing scenes, and they all kind of land right in that time frame we're looking for.
Yeah. I do like to keep things between 30 and 45 minutes. Some, before adding on intros, outros, I do have some episodes that are like 27 minutes, and I have some that are like 43 minutes before intros, outros. But everything still falls around that time.
Right. Within a pretty somewhat comfortable range around that mark.
Yeah. And I love it whenever I get to listen to an actual play that does have a short episode every now and then, because I get to listen to it in one sitting rather than splitting up an hour and a half, 2 hour episode over multiple sittings.
Right.
Which there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like that is the status quo, just because each session is kind of an episode.
Mm-hmm.
In that aspect, or maybe one session is 2 episodes.
Right, but it has that same kind of, like, somewhat finality. It's not like you're just kind of cutting off in the middle of an idea.
Yeah, my goal with this and editing the way that I have, and putting in the music and trying to tell the story to the listeners that we played through, my goal is to create that episodic kind of feel to it, like an anime or a cartoon or a comic book, something like that, which,
yeah,
I love TV. I love comic books. Like, that's my inspiration on this.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's not to say that everything should be resolved in one episode. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's not like, oh, well, you know, everything's good and fine and dandy and we don't have anything to worry about now.
No, there's always a cliffhanger. in these episodes, there's always a cliffhanger.
It's always something going on, something more that you're waiting for. But at least you want to kind of get to the end of a thought. It's like,
yeah. It does have an end thought. Yeah.
It's like our sessions, like our play sessions, are like a paragraph, and each of the episodes is like a sentence.
Yeah.
You don't want to just kind of cut off in the middle of a sentence. Like, you want to finish that sentence, finish that short thought, and then let it kind of build into the larger thought.
Yeah, exactly. And us being able to record the way we have, created a backlog, got the episodes down to the size that we want it to be, and we can actually release more episodes frequently by releasing them Mondays and Fridays every week. Like, we have a good backlog, and we will not miss a week. We will not miss a Monday or a Friday.
Oh, yeah.
If we have to take a month off, we still won't miss a Monday or a Friday.
We're still covered. I mean, it would stink. Like, we'd have a lot of catching back up to do.
Yeah.
But we'd still have enough backlog to cover it.
Yeah. And the joys of having all this recorded, we got the refresher to listen to if we do take a month off.
Right.
I guess another pet peeve of mine with a lot of actual play podcasts, which I push through the audio quality. The audio quality, as long as it isn't very distracting, it doesn't bother me. As long as there's good character development, story development, a good plot, something that leaves me wanting more. Audio quality doesn't really bother me. And another reason why we spent so much time prepping for this was that we wanted it to be solid from the beginning on. We wanted the audio quality to be there. We wanted the production quality to be there. And my recommendation to people wanting to start a new actual play podcast is prepare.
Oh yeah.
You get the idea. You want to go with it. You just want to cut that microphone on and start playing in that campaign. Take some time. Like, really think about it. Hash out a lot of the logistics and everything. Create a backlog. Don't just jump into it.
And
it's really easy to, but just don't jump into it.
And you know what? Practice a little bit.
Yes, practice episodes are key. We did a session 0 that was supposed to be 3 hours. It ended up being 6 hours. We never finished it, but I created a shit ton of episodes out of session 0 for me to practice with, and they were fucking good.
I mean, it gave you practice with editing it. It gave us some practice playing in it and everything. It gave like the other players who weren't quite as comfortable with talking into a mic like we've become. It gave them a chance to be able to talk into a mic a little bit, kind of get used to how that feels, get used to like staying around the mic so that you stay audible. So definitely it can go a long way to just do a little bit of practice first. I mean, Truth be told, that was the entire reason we started doing this podcast in the first place, was to kind of get used to the idea of doing a podcast.
I hate the way our first episodes sound.
I mean, when you go back and listen to them, they do not have the kind of quality that we have now. And I'm not saying, oh, well, yeah, we're just the best thing. That's
no, we
ever
are
come
definitely
out
not.
from podcasts.
We are very amateur.
but you can tell a definite difference between when we started and where we are now.
Yeah. Yeah. Just get through the growing pains, and then once you hit that point where you really like what you're hearing, release it then.
And you know what? I'll just throw a little bit of extra positivity in here. I think this applies to almost anything.
Yeah, it really does.
There's no other way to do something than to do it. And yeah, you're probably not going to be great at it when you first start, but hardly anybody's great at anything when they start it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it takes some time, it takes some practice, but if you stick with it, you'll actually see some growth. You'll see improvement.
Yeah.
Like you'll start actually getting to a place where you're comfortable and proud of what you're doing. And, I think especially with the D&D podcast, the actual play podcast that we're doing, like, I really feel like that kind of shines through for us.
Yeah.
Like, at least personally, I'm very proud of it.
Yeah. From looking where we started at just a little over a year ago with Something More to Podcast, and what I've already finished that's published 2 days ago, and what's going to be coming after that, it's like night and day from where we started, and it's all just been a year-long process to make it happen.
Yeah.
It didn't happen overnight. And I feel lucky that we got to the quality, and I know I'm a little biased, but I think it's as good as it is because of that year. And I feel like we're lucky that we managed to capture that in a year.
And you know what? Bias isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, I know.
Like, at least not always.
No.
But I think it's a good thing to be able to be proud of something that you're doing.
Yeah. It is. And I stopped being overcritical of myself.
I will never stop being overcritical of myself, but I will cope.
But with me being the editor, I have to not be overcritical of it because I will spend way too much time editing.
And this is why I don't edit.
Yes. But no, I have found a happy place in my editing that it helps maintain like just the general feel of playing a game without editing it too much to where it's just you're reading a audiobook.
Right.
with different people talking. I leave in the just human mistakes, just
Yeah.
like the normal stuff that you deal with on a daily basis. Like we're humans, we're playing a game, we're having fun, and that's what we captured.
Yeah. And I would ask that anybody listening to this, like, go check it out. Again, it's Microphones and Monsters. Like, I guess by now we should have a site up.
No, yeah, we do. Yeah, you can go to microphonesandmonsters.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Mike's and spelled out AND, Mike at Mike's and Monsters.
But yeah, like definitely give it a listen, check it out. Maybe let us know what you think.
Yes, please give us a little bit more interaction than over here on Something More to Podcast, because we just ramble, but we don't care.
and apparently that's been doing okay lately, so why not?
Yeah.
But anyways, thanks you for joining us this week, listening to us ramble about our own stuff here.
Mm-hmm. Again.
And hope you join us next week when we have Microphones and Monsters. I mean, Something More to Podcast.